Go, go, go! Further! Go as far as you can! Yes! Receivers. That's what we're going to talk about in today's video. We're going to go over all the different pieces you need to collect to make your own receiver box. We'll cover the cost, why it's important to have them and their true purpose in a display, and then we're going to show you how we built our box. So with that, let's go ahead into the office. So smart receivers, what are they and do I need them? I guess is going to be the big question for you. Do you need them? Not necessarily. It all depends on how close your props are together to your controller, because a smart receiver allows you to extend that distance. Basically, that's their whole purpose. Normally, in perfect conditions, you can get about 30 feet away from your controller before you start having some data loss issues. If you have an F amp in there, you can get a little bit further, maybe 70, 80 feet. But after that, you start to get that data degradation, which is where the smart receivers come in, because with them, you can get up to 200 plus feet away from your controller to run your props. So if you have a huge piece of land with props spread all over the place, you may want one type of controller that allows you to use smart receivers. And the two main controllers out there that have the most ability to use smart receivers are the Culp 40 and the Falcon F48. Currently in our display for our first year, we went with a Falcon F48 and we kept it in the garage. And then we had smart receivers, you can see the arrows in the picture, to 4 different locations throughout our yard. One behind each pillar, and each box had 2 smart receivers in them. And then we had one in the yard that had 4, which basically gave us 16 channels. It was kind of an F16 basically, which controlled our tree and all the props in the yard because they were all close enough. And then we used a final one in the garage to run the matrix that was over our garage. So, and we'll go over when we go through the build, the whole reasoning behind some of the different pieces that we use. We put 2 receivers basically in each box for backup. That way, if one of them blew out, we could just simply move the data cable to the other card and move the lights to the other set of ports. No loss, no downtime, and we were good to go. So we built in some backups in each of our receiver boxes. We added 1 extra card in there, which wasn't needed because we were able to run everything from just the 4 ports. Each one behind the pillars would run all the pillar lights and the set of icicles above in a window. And then the next one did the same thing, the pillar, the icicles above, and the door. And the final one did the pillar and the garage outline. And there was still plenty of room, and we didn't use all the power in our 350 watt power supply. You could also put a smart receiver in a box, and then instead of a second one, you could put a power distribution board if you were going to power inject, which allowed you to run more lights depending on what type of power supply you had in there. Maybe you put in a 750, so that would give you a lot of ability to power inject from those 4 ports. So that's options that you can do when you actually make your particular box. So with that, let's jump through and start showing you some of the different pieces that we use to put this together with. So the first stop is for us is going to be going to JDation to build our mounting plates for our particular box. And the nice thing about JDation side, I'm not going to go through too much detail on it, is but you don't have to purchase the product. I like to because it comes with all the nuts, bolts, standoff, screw mounts, everything that you need. So you don't have to go out and source that stuff yourself. And they look really slick. But you can, JDation has made this site where you can literally just print out the plans, put it on your own medium, whatever you want to use as a mounting board, and cut it out yourself. So there are some cost savings you can do if you choose to do that part yourself, but you don't need to. And so basically you're going to find the box you want to do, and we're going to use a Bud Box 3206. You can, though, do, he's got all kinds of different boxes. If you want to put it in an ammo crate, he's got mounting plates for the ammo crates also. I like to use the bud box though. So that's just some other options that you could go through. Once you select the bud box, it brings you to a page where you can actually design your plates. And I've already got it set up here so you can kind of see what it looks like. We got the mounting plate at the bottom is going to hold our power supply. And then we have two smart receivers. And one thing to think about when you're designing your boards is the orientation of each piece. Where do you want on the screen your lines to come out and your lines to go in? So keep that in mind when you're setting things up as far as cable management and where the end of the box is. You don't want things too close, so make sure there's plenty of space, and even make sure you've thought about where you maybe want to run some zip ties to help with your cable management, because you can actually put those slots in there also. So once it's done, you can figure it out. You can check out, and it was $19 for the boards. Then we went to pixelcontroller.com, because that's where you get the smart receivers for both the Cult boards and for the Falcon boards, and they are $22 a piece. So we're putting two in each box. And then we jumped to Watts to get some of the final pieces that we needed. And you can see in the cart, we've got just a power cord to go to our power supply. We have our power supply, and we're going to get 8 pigtails, 4 for each receiver. And then the last place we have to go is to Amazon just to get our bud box. And then I like to use the PG25 glands, because I can do 4 cables in each one, and you'll see that process when we're on the workbench. So overall price for this entire build, let me bring it up here. As you can see, $201 to build one smart receiver. Now you can reduce that cost by about $60, 55, 60 if you cut your own plates and you don't use a bud box. Maybe you go to your local hardware store and get one of those cheap ammo crates that sometimes we see on sale for $4 or $5. That's an option that you have there. Doesn't have to be in a bud box. I just like the bud boxes. All of my boxes are in bud boxes. So that's the total right there to do that. With that now, let's go ahead and jump over to the workbench and show you how we put this whole thing together. One thing that I kind of skipped when I was filming that, so I will flash up a little note card, is when you are done putting everything on your plates and just before you start to do your wiring, that's when you should drill the holes in your box. And that's typically just by making a template and figuring out where you want your holes and then going and drilling. And I'll show you the drilling process. But I kind of left out the step of when you're supposed to do it. So let's go ahead and jump over. All right, so let's start putting this kit together here. We got our receiver boards, we got our plates from JDation, we got all of our screws that we're going to use in this particular project. If you're going to pre-cut your long screws, it's 8/32 is the threading that you want to use on your wire cutters to cut the bolts down. If that's something you want to do and make them shorter, I like the shorter screws so they don't stick up as high. It makes it a little bit neater looking, but that's just something you can do if you want to. It's an option, not something that's necessary. So the first thing we are going to do is start putting in our long screws. You put a washer on each one. Another washer. And then you put your nuts on. And just you want to tighten them up just a little bit. You don't want to over tighten them. This plexiglass, you don't want to crack your board. All right. Now we're going to mount our power server. And that's just going to be with these regular screws here. That's our bottom plate. So now let's go ahead and do our top plate. And the same thing with your standoffs, you don't want to over tighten them. All right, now that we got our standoffs on, we'll go ahead and we'll attach our boards. And you're just going to line them up with your standoffs and screw them in. So let's just see how they work and put our little spacers on. Radiation does provide you with spacers also, which you can cut to length. But I already had some rubber ones, so I'm just going to go ahead and use those. And then this is how they will mount. So the next step is going to be to prep some wire and attach our power lines. And get ready to attach our power cord. So let's get all that prepped up. All right, guys, so we're outside and we're going to drill the holes in our box. We've got our hole drill to do our P25 glands, and then we're going to use a step bit to do our pass-through cable for our internet, as well as the P9 cable gland. And on these, I just kind of got the holes already marked out, and I'll drill a little bit, and then I'll try to insert the actual gland in and kind of check as I go so I don't over drill the holes. That's kind of the process when it comes to putting the holes in your box. So let's just run through them all. There we go. We're set to go. So we'll take her inside and we'll start mounting stuff in. So the first thing we want to do is add power to our power supply. And this is kind of why we want to have all of these glands in to start with, because we need to thread them through before we connect it in, so when we lift this up and drop it in, there's no disconnect there. And it's just a regular power cord. We're going to strip the wires off and cut them nice and straight also.
So there's our wires all ready to go. And if you don't have a pair of these Irwin wire strippers, you need to get a pair. So we'll bring it up and around. Okay, so we're going ahead and power it up, and we're going to test it out before we plug it into our boards. And 11.95, 11.96. And that's one of the reasons I tend to buy my power supplies from Wired Watch. They do pre-check the levels on all the power supplies, but it's always good to double check. Things can get moved, and if you need to make an adjustment, it's just with this small little screw right here is how you'll make that change. So now we can go ahead and power it down, and we can get ready to mount the top plate and wire it up. All right, so my wires are all prepped. We are using 10 gauge wire. This Falcon's website says to use 10 gauge wire. I know there's a lot of back and forth on, oh, you can get away with 12 or 14, or if the manufacturer of the board says to do this, that's what we're doing. If you choose to do something different, I can't stop you from doing that, but we're going to use 10 gauge wire. And I've already forked the bottom part and kind of pre-put the screw in there to make it just a little bit easier to get them in. There we go. She's all wired up. So now let's just go ahead and take and drop it in the box. Let's put on our top nuts. All right, so she's in, and then I'm going to take and do a little cable management with my Cat 5s. Just a little loopy here. So the only thing we have left now is to do our pigtails. So let's go ahead and show you how we're going to prep one of them. And this is how they come. And there's tinning on the end. You need to get rid of that tinning. Start with fresh wires. And again, there are several schools of thought. Some just put the wires in plain. Some still like the tinning, which you shouldn't do. And I do things with ferrules. Just a personal choice. I find they grip better. And I will put a link in the description to one of the X-Lite's little short videos right above me right now that is on ferrules. So you can see that whole video that they put together, short little 3 or 4 minute video on ferrules. You just put it in there. And yes, I have yellow for yellow, red for red, black for black. And while this is supposedly 18 gauge wire, I find that 20 gauge ferrules have a tighter, snugger fit. We lost a ferrule. You want to make sure all the wires are in there. There we go. There we go. These are all ready to go in our connectors now. And so we'll set up that process and put all of our pigtails into our connectors, and we'll drop them in. And the one thing you want to make sure is you get everything correctly, that it's V. So these go in like this. Okay. So V, and then data, which is yellow, and then ground at the end. So make sure you get the V in the right one. If you don't, you're gonna have some blue smoke. And we'll get all the pigtails out, and we'll start this process kind of through some high speed, but you'll see us put it all into place. Okay, so we got all of our pigtails together. And you also want to make sure that if you are going to label them, you do so prior to putting them in, especially if you're using the P45 glands, because it's all through one central hole. It's not individually, so you would know this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So something to make sure you do beforehand. Otherwise, you're going to have to take them all out to figure out which one goes to which to mark them. So there we have it. Now all we have left to do is to power it up, throw it in test mode, and see if she'll light up some lights. And we got lights. So it's always good at this point to check all of your ports. Let's hit test on the other side. There we go. So we have a working box with 8 receiver ports in it. And to kind of give you the reason why I have 2 in here, you could do one with power injection, like just a power distro board would also work in this. So you'd have 4 ports and then extra power if you're going to power inject. I have an extra one in these. I only run 4 ports technically off from one of these, and the other one is a backup for the holiday season should one blow mid-show. All I have to do is simply move the internet cable from one side to the other and move the lights from these strings to these strings, and I'm back up and running. So it's kind of a redundancy, but I have them on all of my receiver boxes. I have one extra. If I have 2 in it, I have a third one for a backup, just in case something should go wrong during the show. And sometimes during the holiday season too, it's tough to get a part. So then I never worry about having to have a part. So that's the reason kind of why I did that. And she is all set to go. Oh, one thing left to add. The "do not touch or this will kill you" sticker. Now it's ready to go.
Well, everybody, that's going to do it for another one of our videos. We hope you got a lot of good information out of this that will help you build your own receiver boxes that you can put to good use in your display this holiday season. If you did like it, think about giving us a thumbs up, maybe hitting that subscribe button or checking out a couple of our other videos that we've got listed over here. As always, we'll be coming out with a lot of fresh, cool new content, as well as we've launched our own brand new website, counterholidaylights.com. So until the next video, we'll see you around.